Katherine Gibson for Insight. Today I'm joined by Badkhen, author of the new ebook Afghanistan by Donkey, an account of her year of travels around northern Afghanistan. Anna, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
What went into your decision not to embed with Nato in Afghanistan and instead travel around northern Afghanistan yourself?
I think that we don't hear enough the story of the Afghan people, the 30 million people who actually populate that battlefield. We see them on our TV screens. They flit by sort of two-dimensional, like these cartoonish figures. We see people grieving at the site of a suicide bombing. We see girls in headscarves sitting in a school. We don't see and we don't hear enough of what it's like to live in Afghanistan. And that's the story I felt that I could tell, and so I embedded, if you will, with the people of Afghanistan.
Why northern Afghanistan?
It was considered one of the safe places in Afghanistan, and probably one of the more neglected, as a result, places by international aid. And what happened was, while NATO was focusing its military effort in southern and eastern Afghanistan, the Taliban returned to northern Afghanistan very quietly and pretty much uncontested. So I wanted to tell stories from that quiet battlefield that wasn't really the traditional battlefield, because there are very few NATO troops in the area, and yet there is a, if you want to call it, an insurgency that is creeping into the region. And I wanted to tell a story of how that interaction works, what that insurgency means to Afghans.
In the book you write, the last decade of war has done little more than prolong the violence people there have endured for centuries. Do you find that this is used as an excuse to say, things will always be this way in Afghanistan, things can never change?
We're talking about a place that has been brutalized for 2,500 years, pretty much since the beginning of the recorded history of Afghanistan, or of the place we call Afghanistan. And yet, this is a people that knows how to find joy, a people that creates tremendous beauty. But I was really hoping that my book, which gave faces to these characters, to people who live there, would maybe not allow that dismissal to happen so easily.
You write about nighttime raids from the perspectives of the villagers in northern Afghanistan. What do you make of the recent agreement between the U.S. and Afghanistan ceding more control over these raids to Afghan forces?
I am wondering what are we trying to achieve? What are these nighttime raids for? Are they to stop this particular insurgency? Are they to root out, as it were, the Taliban? What does that do? What does that do for Afghans? I think the question that I keep returning to over and over, and the more time I spend in Afghanistan, the more this question seems to me emitted and important at the same time, is what's the goal? What's this for?
Tell us about some of the reaction to the death of Osama bin Laden, which happened while you were there. Do you think that the villagers in northern Afghanistan had a sense for why America wanted him dead?
A lot of villagers in the parts of Afghanistan where I travel had never heard of Osama bin Laden. Some had heard of bin Laden and said, oh, was he an Arab merchant? Because to them, the death of bin Laden, from their point of view, and the life of bin Laden was pretty much irrelevant. See, there is an interesting disconnect, I find, between how we view the war in Afghanistan and how Afghans view the war in Afghanistan. We view the war in Afghanistan as an event that began with, or as a result of, attacks on September the 11th, 2001. Afghans see war in Afghanistan as this constant push and pull between different militias. warlords who represent different interests. And it's not a war that began 10 years ago, or 40 years ago, or 100 years ago. It's a war that has been going. We're talking about millennial grudges. We're talking about land disputes. We're talking about ethnic disputes that go way, way back.
And what's your sense for how all of that will shift once the U.S. and international forces are removed from the equation?
I think that NATO pullout may make a big difference in cities where most of the people who had benefited from NATO presence are concentrated. Mm-hmm. I think in rural Afghanistan, and it's an overwhelmingly rural society, maybe 80% rural, I think that it wouldn't make such big of a difference, because we're talking about a people who haven't really benefited from all the billions of dollars in international aid, from NATO presence, especially in the north. I've been going to the north for 11 years now, and I see very little change. I don't see a whole lot of roads being built. I don't see a whole lot of villages getting electricity. So to a lot of people there, and this is what they tell me, they don't see how that would really alter their landscape.
So in a way, it's almost a luxury for the villagers to worry about the Taliban. They have even more basic concerns that we don't even hear about in the American media.
It's not a luxury. It's not a worry. It's a sort of a background worry. We're not a worry at all. Many villages are ethnic Pashtun villages, and their villagers are not worried about Taliban coming. They're worried about the Taliban not coming.
Will you be able to return to Afghanistan? Do you anticipate that?
Inshallah, as they say. Mm-hmm. Hopefully. I would love to.
Anna, thank you very much for speaking with me today. I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.